Welcome to Better Teaching, Only Stuff That Works, a podcast for teachers, instructional coaches, administrators, and anyone else who supports teachers in the classroom. This show is a proud member of the BE Podcast Network, shows that help you go beyond education. Find all our shows at bepodcastnetwork.com. I am Gene Tavernetti, the host for this podcast, and my goal for this episode, like all episodes, is that you laugh at least once and that you leave with an actionable idea for better teaching. A quick reminder, no cliches, no buzzwords, only stuff that works. Today, I'll be speaking with the co-directors of academics at the Writing Revolution. The first is Alexandria Chalonec. And in addition to training educators nationally and internationally, Alexandria works with state and district leaders to support implementation of the Hochman method. Alexandria holds an MS in special education from City College and a BA in psychology from the University of Pennsylvania. The other co-director, Christine Teahan, facilitates and coordinates the creation of courses and workshops that support educators with implementing the Hochman method. Currently, she is leading content development for the Writing Revolutionary's new self-paced introductory training for educators of grades 3 through 12. Previously, Christine taught middle school English, math, science, and social studies. She holds an MA and a BA in special education from the University of Maryland. I think you're going to like this one. Hello, Alex and Christine. I've been looking forward to talking to you folks probably since New York City.
We've
been a while.
So much. We also been looking forward to talking with you.
It's nice to be here together.
Yes, it is. Well, we are here to talk about the Writing Revolution. As mentioned in your bios, both of you work with the Writing Revolution. And I'm thinking, what an audacious name, the Writing Revolution. Can you describe it a little bit, what the Writing Revolution is? And what makes it different? What makes it so revolutionary?
Yes, it is a big name. We have a big mission. The Writing Revolution is a nonprofit organization. And as a nonprofit, we train and support teachers and schools in implementing the Hochman method, which is an evidence-based method of explicitly teaching expository writing. It's a carefully sequenced methodology. And it is a methodology that's really aimed for K through 12 and beyond. And it's meant to be embedded across all content areas. So wherever there's content, this method is intended to be developed. And something about the Hochman method is that it was developed and refined with teachers in a school setting and continue to learn and grow from the schools and the teachers that we work with.
Yes, and something that makes us different. First of all, there is, of course, the science of teaching. We're well aware of that, thankfully, more and more so in the community. A lot of focus has been on the science of reading, and we are here to identify that writing is an essential part of teaching literacy. It should be the science of literacy. In addition to there being the science behind the teaching, there's also an art to teaching. And so the Hochman method, which is the methodology that we are out here trying to train teachers to use, that is something that actually quite a few of our competitors or people out there use as the science. But what we also do that differentiates us is that we are really working hard to prepare teachers to actually teach it effectively. We educate the teachers, we train them, we provide teachers with tools, and we have ongoing support for teachers. So while a lot of people might offer a lot of tools that may or may not be appropriate, we really do provide all four, and we are focused very much on the art and science of teaching.
Can you expand a little bit on that, about the art of teaching, what you mean by that? Science of learning, got a lot of people talk about that, but haven't heard anybody talk about the art of teaching for a while.
When you ask that question, the first person I thought of is Kristen Simmers, who I'm sure you know from the Research Ed circuit. I saw her give a presentation about adaptive expertise. There's all the science, and we absolutely have to use the science to teach, but we also have to be able to adapt to the students in our classroom. And there's always a wide range of personalities and abilities in our classrooms. So and there's content, and there's a whole breadth of content. And from one class to the next, from one day to the next, from one human to the next, things just are not going to work out perfectly and scientifically. So we are very much here for the human element of it. And the method is scaffolded and broken down in such a way that it is much more accessible to teachers and easier for teachers to meet students where they are, whether they have to really break it down further for students who might be struggling a little more, or add a little something extra for students who are learning at a faster pace. This method really provides ways to meet students wherever they are on a daily basis and use it for whatever content that's being taught. And it's very nice to have that scope and sequence. Everybody wants that. It's a great starting point, but we also have to be flexible and be able to use it to be able to adjust in the moment to meet the needs of our students.
One of the things when you talk about, and you were talking about how you need to adapt, thinking of you two and going back to your bios for a second, Alex was a special ed teacher. You were a middle school teacher, which means almost by definition that Alex is very sweet, and that you're crazy. You got to be a little crazy to teach middle school.
Absolutely.
And so you're right. You have to have the methodologies that make sense, that are, based in good science and based in research. But there has got to be room for those personalities to come out, because most teachers are hired. There's an assumption you have skills. You're hired for your personality and how you're going to deal with kids. So it's nice to hear that from you all talking about that.
Yeah. Middle school is the best. I just want to throw that out there. The worst years to live in, the best years to teach.
Yeah, that's funny. Well, another thing you said in your answer was you were talking about scaffolding. And, we are full of educationese. And we think we know what the other person is talking about when they say scaffolding. I was, like many people, going through my pictures looking for something the other day, and there was a picture of during your presentation in New York, and it was on scaffolding. And like I told you when I was there, I was very impressed with what you guys were doing. And then when I saw this, I was reminded of the question is, what is scaffolding? I mean, because I looked at what you had listed as this list of things to do for scaffolding, and I might have just said, that's sequence. You just sequence the lessons. So how do you guys talk about scaffolding with content teachers and ELA teachers, and how do you guys talk about that?
Well, the first thing that's coming to mind when we talk about scaffolding within the method, the method itself, it's a set of strategies, so sentence level strategies, paragraph outlining strategies that builds from sentences to paragraphs, essays, and incorporates many other important skills like summarizing, revising, note-taking, etc. Within each of those sets of strategies, like sentences, there are scaffolds for each of those activities. So let's say how to write in a positive. There's a series of scaffolds because that's a really complex structure. So in hearing your question, the way we think about scaffolding is, what is the objective we're trying to achieve? What's the purpose of being able to incorporate it in a positive in a sentence? And how do we pair that back to the most basic essence to just initially meet students where they are for the very first time, to bring them into this unfamiliar strategy, and then slowly and gradually add layers of complexity. So it is sequencing in many ways, but it's also breaking down an individual skill into its most basic component parts in order to be responsive to where individual students are, and then also responsive to an entire class that's learning something for the very first time. And so in that way, we'd like to say that it gives teachers a lot of flexibility, because they can introduce something that is accessible for the whole class, but also for the teacher as well, that's learning this methodology, and the writing instruction is almost scaffolded for them as well as they're starting to gain proficiency with the strategies and then the entire method.
And I want to add to that too, because it's the same concept as if you're building a building, you use the scaffolding to get the material up where you need it to be, and then you take the scaffolds away, right? That's something that is very important, that When a student is able to do something independently, then you don't need to scaffold it. If you want them to do more, then you scaffold it up for them. You teach them how to do this next thing, and then you take that support away and see how they do it on their own. But I also want to add too that the method itself, we talk about how a lot of content is dense, right? Especially as you get into secondary. If you're getting into high school and you're reading this advanced literature and you want to help students break down the content and understand it and learn it, think about it a little more deeply, the writing really helps that. The writing about the content helps to break down that content for students and understand it in smaller chunks as well. And just wanted to throw that out there as one of the benefits of writing about content.
Well, I usually don't disagree with my guests, but I'm going to disagree with you folks. And here's what I'm going to disagree on. You made two statements when you were talking about your scaffolding, and you mentioned that some students may need it. No, you just start from the beginning. If a student knows what it is, guess what? It's just going to go more quickly. And I think writing is one of those areas. My observations of writing lessons is just assuming that kids know more than they do, and then giving an assignment without understanding because we didn't go back. It doesn't hurt to go over it. And the way that you guys talk about it, another thing that I was so excited about watching you, it was so direct. It was so explicit. Before we even ask you to do anything, we're just going to ask you to identify it in the sentence. We're going to teach you how to identify it. I mean, those types of things, because if you don't know what it is, you can't do it. So I'm going to disagree with you there. I think it's very strong in that, and everybody needs it. The second area of disagreement before I allow you to talk.
But Jean, I don't know if that's a disagreement. I would say we agree very much that this isn't just for some students, right? You teach all of the students, you move them all through the various scaffolds, and you move them and expose them to the different strategies. What I'm referencing is that you can then go back and meet different students where they are. And some students are going to move more quickly. Some students are going to need additional supports. And the various scaffolds within the strategies allow you to kind of differentiate in that way.
Just so you know, Alex, we haven't talked for a long time. When I say I disagree with you, it means because I think your point can be made even stronger.
Beautiful.
I'm with you.
Thank you for amplifying.
Because the second thing was you talk about how much teachers can learn here. And it's the same thing. Writing is one of the things that writing and math, my experience has been working with elementary teachers. Those are the two places that this is a big generalization, that they're least strong personally, and so that they're least strong in their instruction, and they need that scaffolding and that sequencing to understand.
Yeah.
It's so true. And so often we hear teachers when we're visiting schools, they will say, I don't feel confident in my abilities to write. And so I sometimes avoid teaching writing in class. And we see that when, if you're being confronted with something that is outside of your comfort zone as a teacher, that can certainly come through. And fortunately, the inverse of that is true as well. As teachers develop in confidence, then they're able to lead with this and inspire their students and have the skills to really back that up and to be able to move them along with becoming more proficient in writing as well.
So you guys do a lot of training of teachers. What's the biggest thing that they lack? What's a big point of emphasis for y'all?
Well, one of the things goes back to something you just said, and that is assigning writing is not teaching writing. And even when teachers are well equipped to have with the science of teaching reading, in that way, they understand what explicit instruction is. But then when you talk about writing, a lot of teachers think that you print this worksheet and you have this nice setup and then you put it on the desk and the students are writing. And that's writing instruction. And that's a huge piece that we see is how they don't understand or they haven't learned how to apply explicit instruction practices to actual writing assignments and writing skills.
So another thing that I don't want to give you blisters on your shoulders as I'm patting you on the back here, but another thing that I saw as I was going through your book was the notion of your sentence stems and this is important for the content teachers, is they are there to reinforce content. It's not to, oh, what do you think? No, it's not what do you think. It is, this is an example of something because, and so it really truly is beneficial to the content area teachers who probably are very confused about how they can improve writing in their classroom, or even if it's their job.
Yeah. And that's another piece of it is a lot of the curricula that teachers use or the programs that teachers use, even when they say they incorporate writing, a big problem is that they make a lot of assumptions about what students should be able to do at every single level. Kindergartners are expected to come in writing full sentences, or maybe by October. Third graders are expected to write multiple paragraph essays. And then forget middle school and high school, what they're expected to do. So there's all this focus on that end product. And it doesn't matter what subject we're talking about, because whether it's math, where they have to explain how they solved the problem, or it's science, where they have to elaborate on their lab results, there's a lot of writing across content. And it's not just about telling the students to write, it's about giving them these tools to actually teach them how to write about what they're learning.
And I would add to that, that there's the pushback and then the buy-in, two sides of the coin. I think the pushback that we sometimes get from content area teachers, particularly, secondary, where there's a lot of content to get through, is that I don't have the time. I don't have the time to focus on writing. I don't have the time to build in all of the sentence level work or the outlining. But then the flip side of the buy-in is that when they try out the strategies, when they just sort of get in there and see how these strategies can be embedded, where they're already asking a question, they're already checking for comprehension in some way, that these strategies almost dissolve into their lessons when they're aligned effectively with the lesson objective. And it just becomes the way through which teachers are asking a question, or the way through which they're assessing student understanding, or the way they are leading the discussion in the class. And so in that way, teachers see, oh, wow, I'm really using the same instructional time, but now I'm giving students a structure, a frame through which to think through this, or a frame through which to respond in a complex and concise way. And so that's when you start to see teachers gravitating to the method and wanting to lean in more to, not just use it as a check for understanding here or there, an exit ticket, but how can these strategies be more deeply embedded as kind of the way to deliver core elements of the lesson.
I want to ask you about your training. Like, how much time is a teacher going to be with you to learn this methodology? And do you divide groups into content areas, secondary, elementary? How do you do the logistics? What are the logistics like of your trainings?
I'll take that one. That's my world. We have several different training offerings, and we are building on what we have. We are introductory. So first, the book is the method. That's a great starting point, is to have the book. We encourage the training to go along with the book, because there's a lot that comes, that we bring the book to life, basically. How does this actually look when you're teaching it? And further explaining some of the strategies and showing the different ways to present them. We have 3 introductory courses currently available. They're virtual, so they're broken into 2-hour sessions. We have our main introductory courses for grades 3 through 12, mostly focused on ELA and social studies content. And that is a 12-hour course, so 6 2-hour sessions. And we have a STEM course. So this is an 8-hour course that is focused on teaching writing in math and science areas. And then we have our introductory course for K2 teachers, which is also 8 hours. The reason why those 2 courses are 8 hours versus the 12 of the grades 3 through 12 is that some of the strategies are not as relevant to the particular subject areas. We do not encourage K through 2 teachers to be teaching multiple paragraph essays. So that's a whole entire section of the course that we cut out. And then there's some changes, like a much bigger emphasis on oral language instruction on the K2 level, a bit of a difference of sequence of the activities. And for math and science, all of the examples we show in that course are in math and science examples from elementary, middle, and high school grades. And then from there, we have tools online, resources that are available to them that come with the training. We have some more coming as well that we're working on right now. And depending on the nature of the relationship, some teachers come to us, take the training, and say, thank you, goodbye, this was great. Some we work with partner schools and districts and states, which I can let Alex speak to more, where we have follow-up, where we observe teachers, we work with the administrators, we coach. And so it really just depends on what the relationship is.
Just add to that, there is a cost for the training, but we try to keep the Hochman method as accessible to as many educators as possible. So we do have a scholarship program where I think we had 1,000 applicants, and we're always trying to gain philanthropic support to be able to make the training available at no cost for as many educators as possible. But we have a lot of free resources on the website because we know the book, like Christine said, it's a phenomenal resource. And how can we help supplement and bridge folks from reading the book to maybe seeing a webinar or being able to access some of the resources so they can see how the book comes to life in a classroom or in their content area as well.
When teachers come to you, let's say you're working with a district. No, let's say it's an open, the teachers sign up. Is there any sort of profile that you can generalize? Are there things that that many people come in missing in their training that you see that, oh, here's a big gap we need to fill?
Oh, we get to talk archetypes.
I don't know if we're going that far. Yes. We actually have a poll in the beginning of our course that asks teachers, how prepared how much did your teacher preparation program prepare you to teach writing? And about 85% of teachers say not at all. About 15% of teachers say a little bit, and the rest, nobody says, I'm prepared to teach writing. And I will say that when we have courses that are just open to the public and teachers are self-selected, they come eager and ready to learn and knowing full well that this is something that they need. Our courses are so fun to teach, in part because, especially those public courses, when we get 125 teachers in a course that are there because they want to be there, it's quite an experience, and they know what they need and they know they're there to learn it. And it's a really great experience.
Plus, you're a middle school teacher. How much more fun could that be?
I don't know. I don't think it could be more fun.
You talked about this, people who self-select. How about going into a district? Do you see the same profiles? Are there some archetypes, Alex?
There's certainly some profiles that we see. I love a good archetype. A lot of times when we do the work with the district, so much of it depends on what they're looking to achieve. So, some districts are coming, especially with a lot of policies around, science of reading, adoption. There are more districts that are coming to us that have already done a look at their curriculum or an audit of their curriculum. And maybe as a district, they're adopting a new curriculum or they have done that adoption in the past. So some of the pre-work has been done where TWR, the Hochman method it's highly effective when it's implemented across a school or district. It's even more effective when it's being adopted into an ecosystem where there are already a high quality curriculum in place, where there are already effective teaching practices that are in place as well. So you do see some difference in those district just based on kind of where they're coming from and where they are in their journey of kind of adopting science of learning practices.
So the writing revolution, you didn't say it was a curriculum. Is it a curriculum? How would you characterize it?
Yeah, it's a methodology. So the Writing Revolution is the nonprofit that trains and supports teachers in implementing the Hochman method. Okay. And the Hochman method is a methodology. And so in that way, it is really curriculum agnostic. It's meant to be embedded in whatever curriculum is in place, whatever content teachers are teaching, and it's aligned with whatever the learning objective is.
So how about in the elementary? How about in the elementary grades as they begin to write? Does it overlay on a writing curriculum that they already have? Do they determine, well, we're going to do the Hochman methodology instead? What does a district need to do to?
So I can speak to some of our district partners that we work with, specifically in that K2 space. Some districts, one I'm thinking of in particular, they use CKLA. And so TWR the Hochman method aligns really nicely to it being embedded in certain curriculum like that, where there's opportunities to ask questions and have discussion. The check for understandings is where TWR can really be folded in quite nicely. And a lot of times where it is being folded in is reinforcing whatever students have been reading about, or having a conversation around the learning to set students up for some kind of class conversation or discussion. And in that way, with K-2, the strategies are meant to be practiced orally, where the teacher is the one facilitating the lesson, the teacher is the one recording the information on the board for all of the students to see, and the students are being prompted and they are practicing giving their responses aloud, because we know that oral language development helps to really prime the pump for later writing when the students are ready to write, a full sentence versus just learning how to shape their letters. So it's really reaching those K-2 students at a place that's developmentally appropriate for them. But we know students that age, they are going to be able to express their understanding orally at a far higher level than they're going to be able to express their understanding in a well-crafted sentence. So this is setting them up to be able to do that when it's appropriate.
We talked about earlier, one of my areas of amplification, not disagreement, was about the teachers being able to see the sequence and learn the content as they were doing it. Another thing that I'm impressed with about the methodology is that embedded in that methodology, or included in the methodology, is effective explicit instruction. Now, I've been doing work with training teachers in explicit instruction for over 20 years, and I can tell you there are not many that know how to do it well. And my question is this another one of the things that's embedded and they learn, or do you have to explicitly explain how explicit instruction works?
Yep, that is a great question. And we talk about this. It's been a point of conversation, since forever, because we come into a school or we come to teachers as the writing people, but we find that a lot of our focus has to be on what explicit instruction actually looks like. So for us, we have that basis. You have this sentence expansion, and we, based on our assessments, because you should always be assessing where your students are, and based on what we can tell from what your students produced independently while they were completing this worksheet by themselves because you weren't teaching it, here's where we think you should have, what we would suggest going forward that you do with sentence expansion. And we will walk them through. Our feedback to teachers is often, grounded in gradual release of responsibility and explicit feedback, and what that actually looks like in practice, because those two pieces are massively important. And we find that what does explicit instruction look like? But we have the writing to use to say it, but that is what the conversation actually is about a lot of the time. And even when, any teacher who can create the worksheets or the activities, and they look nice and they're formatted well, which is really important. When it comes to that teaching, that's the next big step. And that's what we do spend a lot of our time focusing on in our coaching.
We really have 3 layers in what we're teaching, is that what is the method? What are the strategies? How does it all come together and work? And then how do you select the strategy and align that to whatever you're trying to teach in an effective way? And then that third piece is the instructional delivery. So much of our implementation work when we're there on the ground is supporting teachers with, you've done the planning, now how do you plan in what the delivery is going to look like to really set up that delivery to be as effective as it can be. So that's where kind of we build in the explicit instruction support through that specific strategy, and we're able to give a lot of feedback that amplifies the strategy as well as just sort of those best practices for teaching. And I think one of the most popular resources on our TWR tools, our website, is the in-action videos of what this just looks like to teach these lessons. And I think we can tell folks in coaching sessions, we can model it, we could do all of these things, but I think it really helps for teachers to see what does explicit instruction within the method actually look like in front of the classroom? What does it sound like? What are the students doing? What is the teacher doing? And so we have seen the importance of that so much that we have actually crafted Hockman Studios in our office, which is a mock-up classroom where we're able to actually demonstrate some of these best practices for instructional delivery.
kudos to you because it is absolutely necessary. I've been to a couple research ads and reading all this stuff like you are, and I'll read about some sort of strategy and I'll read about a lethal mutation. And I hate that. If I'm working with a teacher and they tried something, God bless you. Let's make it work now. I'm not going to say you screwed it up, but we always read about lethal mutations. And there's just this assumption about explicit instruction. Blah, blah, blah. You're going to do this, you do this strategy. Oh, and use explicit instruction and then use this strategy as if everybody knows how to do it, but they don't.
Yeah.
And I hope that the folks are able to extrapolate and generalize from the explicit instruction in the writing that you teach them how to do to go on to other things. And then maybe they can recognize in their great research-based reading programs that they've already designed explicit instruction for you. And then maybe at some point we can make the generalization to all the topics. So tell me about what's one of the biggest things that we hear every day is about AI. What about AI and the work you guys do?
Well, we get asked that question all the time. You can't be surprised to hear that. We've taken our time with this one, and we are well aware that there are a lot of AI tools out there that are basically ChatGPT with some lipstick on it. And we do not want to be that we don't want to put anything out there like that. So we have actually spent quite a lot of time and resources on working with a world-renowned company to develop AI tools that are going to help teachers. They're coming out this summer. And that AI tool that we're going to be launching is an activity generator. It will save teachers tons of time. It's also a coach that will help them to figure out what it is they can include, what they should teach, how they can teach it. It's great. More to come on that in a few weeks. We also, just to address a couple of other things that we often get asked, so we may as well just say it, is there a need for teaching writing in the age of AI? And the answer is more than ever, because we are in desperate need of generations of people who can think critically about the information that they are reading and learning. And even though AI has a ton of capabilities, what we should be doing is teaching the students the skills that they can use the AI as basically as their personal assistant, but they have to be able to recognize what is true, what is not true, what they should do further research on, how can they make it better. They need to be able to think critically. And in order to do that, they need to be taught how to write about what it is they're learning, because we need to get those parts of their brain working. And we are not going to be, as far as putting AI in the hands of children, that's a whole other world. There are just not enough restrictions on what children can access in AI, and those kinds of tools just aren't there yet. And that's not what we're working on. We're working on making teachers' lives more efficient and saving their time in that regard.
I would add to that, just in terms of generative writing in the age of generative AI, where generative AI is so much about the end product, right? And so much of student writing is writing as a way to do a whole bunch of other really important things. It's writing, explicit writing instruction is almost like a keystone, where it is, when you explicitly teach writing, you're deepening students' thinking skills. You're building oral language. You can weave in vocabulary development. We're raising students' confidence levels. We're raising teachers' confidence levels. We're giving students an opportunity to feel successful throughout every single lesson, every single day. And teachers have a tool to give specific feedback to support that success and that growth. So much of writing is about fostering that sense of belonging, skill development, proficiency. And oh, by the way, it'll help you get to a better end product. But it's the more we can support teachers and really schools and districts, the decision makers, with implementing explicit writing method, then I think we'll do all of these other pieces. I think that they will start to see this isn't about writing or AI. This is about writing as a conduit to just really developing the skills and capabilities of our students and our teachers.
Sounds very analogous to what we talked about earlier, is having those scaffolds and starting at the beginning. You can't just jump to AI. There, you just delineated all the skills that you need to be able to use it effectively. And so So you guys will have something for that to help the teachers.
Right.
We will.
Yeah. So one of the things that I've heard several teachers, when I talk to them, they will say, oh yeah, the writing revolution, I use this. I use expanded sentences. The writing revolution, I use this. They take a piece of it, like this little bit. What do you think when you hear that?
Great start.
Yeah, better than nothing.
Yes, thank you for using any of the strategies. That's awesome. Do you want to hear about more?
Yeah. Because I think there is more, and what I think is missing many times, the explicit instruction. It's
Oh,
like we're
yes.
taking this, we're taking that, but there's this piece missing that's very important. What else? What else do you want folks to know about the writing revolution that didn't ask you?
It's so true. People will say, oh, we love your sentence activities, or we love that outline. That's just fantastic. I think a build on that is important for people to know is that when implementing this method in an individual classroom, fantastic. Implementing this across a school, even better, and across a district, phenomenal, because what happens is that you are giving teachers an opportunity to have just a cohesive approach. Like, this is just how we teach writing here. This is how we can talk about what we do in my classroom and how you can be supplementing that in your classroom, and we can start to get that transference of skills. It changes the conversation and the dynamic when teachers are coming together to collaborate, to look at student writing, to plan for a department or a grade level. And so in that way, I think that we started with talking about how revolutionary, it's a big name, the writing revolution. In this way, it really creates a tremendous revolution. It's quite a spark when this is something that can be done across grades, across content areas. A lot of people who work at the district level will say to us, that's a really compelling point, because it's hard when you have something for K2, you have something for the 3-5 schools, and now it shifts for the 6-8 schools. Students know what to expect. This can follow them right up through at 12th grade and beyond.
Yeah, that's the first thing that I wrote down. When you asked that question, I wrote down breaking down silos, because from the time I started here, I worked in a school that used it across grades and content before I started working here. And I was a math and science teacher in addition to ELA and social studies. And it was remarkable being able to use the method in those subjects, but then to come in here and be able to work with teachers, it was one of the surprising things. I was so focused on the impact on students and how I got to watch that progress over the years, and I could not wait to get here and tell teachers all about it. One of the surprising things for me right in the beginning was hearing teachers talk to the breaking down of silos, of a 6th grade teacher working with an 8th grade teacher, of a math teacher working with an ELA teacher, and just being able to come together and work on something. And this is that connective line, that thread for all the grades and content. In addition to it boosting confidence. The first year you teach it, one thing to say is it takes time. There's a lot of strategies. You have to give yourself grace. You have to, there's a lot to learn in there, right? But as you do, one thing you notice is the confidence in the teachers and in the students. So teachers walk away from our training feeling more confident. And that's a very important piece of the puzzle, that emotional piece. And students, when they know what to expect, when they see strategies formatted in a way that looks familiar and they don't need to think about it, it's not something brand new. When they're hearing the terminology used the same from class to class, that is a level of safety for them. And that emotional safety frees them up to learn that consistency. And so that's a really important benefit of using this method across schools.
It is interesting how we talk about all the time about having this common language and having this as if it's just this amorphous, ephemeral concept. But this is, now you've operationalized it. This is when we're talking about writing sentences, we can talk about it the same way. This is what we've learned. This is what the kids are coming to you. This is what we talked about in ELA. So when they get to you, science teacher, you can expect more of them because of this. I know that I remember working with one middle school, and they were goofy, as you can expect the teachers. But we were talking about, have you ever done anything where your kids, they have a partner and they turn and they talk to each other? Oh, no, it couldn't do that. Well, this was like like 80% Hispanic school with 60% second language learners. And the math people didn't know that the kids were doing this all day long.
Mm.
They were bringing in these skills already that they could build on. So having what you just described, I think, is so powerful. And again, it's a very specific example of something that you can do organizationally and not just, okay, we're going to do this with the writing teachers.
Yep, exactly.
Okay. All right. I asked you a bunch of questions. You have any questions for me, you guys?
Yes. Do we have another hour?
Yeah.
You've had so many interesting guests on your podcast, and your work is so interesting. Well, yeah, I have a question. I have a couple, so we'll see where we get.
Okay.
But when you are working with schools that are currently navigating multiple initiatives, what do you find helps coaches and leaders keep the focus on what matters? And how does that work for you? What is your experience with that?
Well, of course, my bias is explicit instruction, which goes everywhere. I am curriculum agnostic over the entire curriculum. I don't care. So the big thing, I think, in going into a school with multiple initiatives, number one, if I have any influence at all, which I normally don't, is tell them you've got too many initiatives. And if you're a site administrator, you got to buck up and just you got to leave some stuff off. In fact, I have on my wall, I have a copy of an email that Mike Schmoker sent to a district where he was working. And I'm just going to read it. And he sent it to two district administrators. And he said, whatever you don't get distracted, don't pursue other initiatives or take any new book studies or trainings or whatever. Those new things are precisely what stop momentum dead. New initiatives swallow faculty meeting and training time and take everyone's eye off the ball. Failure to focus guarantees the failure to implement first things. Now, once these are mastered, then you can pursue other things, carefully always reviewing and repeating and monitoring to assure the fundamentals aren't forgotten with time, as they surely will be without such repetitions and vigilance.
Mm.
So what I try to do, they're never going to listen to me. I always say a lot of people have to die before I'm in charge. So they're not listening to me. So what I have to do as somebody coming in from the outside is understand everything that they're doing to try to make sure that as I present what I'm presenting, it supplements, it helps them do some of the things that they're doing. It doesn't always match, but I don't want them to think this is one more thing. I want them to think this is something to ease what you're doing. But to have an outside consultant come in and say that doesn't mean anything unless the administration is also saying that we're backing off on this other thing until we get this done. And then they have to stand up to the district administration.
Yep.
Well, I have a follow-up question to that. When you have seen that kind of success, the pattern, what are some of the patterns you notice in schools or coaching relationships where that instruction actually sticks? What is the context or what's taking place when you are able to see some of that growth and some of that success?
But the success is always individual teachers. It's very rarely school-wide. And just earlier in the conversation, we talked about teachers will grab this out of the writing revolution and that out of the writing revolution. It's very similar in the work that I've done with schools. I mean, I will work most times if we go into a district and start with a school, then we'll start working with another school, just kind of word of mouth. A principal will ask me, a principal is kind of leery. Well, somebody suggested that I do this. Is there a school that I can go to see where this has been implemented? I say, no. I can send you to some teachers' classrooms, and even then they're taking the science of the explicit instruction and creating art with it. So even if I sent you to two different classrooms where teachers had embraced a lot of it, it's going to look very different.
Yeah.
And the other thing is we'll be in a district for a few years and do, all this good work, and everybody's, we got a lot of momentum going, and a new superintendent comes in
Mhm.
and it's done. So, boy, let me know if you get a good answer from somebody about that, because I don't know. It's just, you just keep on doing the work like you
Yeah.
guys are doing.
I think
Yeah.
it circles back to the email that you read where, with effective implementation, it's not leaving the initiative or whatever you're doing too soon. There's one step forward, there's two steps back, there's two steps forward, there's one step back. You have to just kind of keep sticking with it. You've never arrived. You've never arrived.
And it's funny, oh, it didn't work. Well, let's get a new assessment for our intervention program to see who qualifies. I mean, and it's just this continuous cycle of like, stop and get good enough at it.
Yeah.
Erase that as a variable. Take that out. Everybody's good at this thing. Now we can move on to the next. But it is frustrating. It's frustrating for teachers. It makes it hard to come in and do work, because especially veteran teachers, oh yeah, okay. What do you guys do? We went into one school at a veteran teacher. It was like the first meeting. We were meeting with the teachers in an after-school program just to be introduced. And a veteran teacher raised her hand. We haven't even started talking yet. She said, "What tricks are you going to show us?" We don't do tricks.
Cynicism.
But that's what you face. It doesn't matter how good your stuff is. It's still a lot of work.
Yeah, it is a lot of work. I mean, I think we feel really privileged. Like Christine said, we train a lot of teachers across the country, internationally, and they come to us at all different stages in their career. And I think we always have a lot of gratitude, because it can be easy to just sit back and do what you've always done, and things are changing over here and there. But a lot of the educators come to our sessions really eager to improve their practice, and we have so much gratitude for that kind of commitment to mastery and that kind of commitment to what else can be done to support our students. So
yeah, and we ask teachers to evaluate our training, and we collect comments, and there's a lot of comments over the years are teachers that say, and even in the chat at the end of a course, of teachers that say, in my 20 years of teaching, in my 25 years of teaching, this is the best professional development I've ever received, the most effective. I can actually turn around and use this in my classroom tomorrow, because we see the same cynicism, but this is something that, anybody can use and apply to what they're doing. And it is unfortunately a missing piece for so many educators. So yeah, once you get them, that's a great place to start. Those teachers who see it, get it,
Yeah. Well, Alex and Christine, this has been a pleasure. I knew it would be. And you guys going to Denver?
I am.
Hopefully.
Okay. You're going to St. Andrews?
Yep.
Okay. We'll see you there.
We'll see you there. Thank you so
Always
much.
fun. Thank you, Jean.
My pleasure. I knew it would be fun. If you're enjoying these podcasts, tell a friend. Also, please leave a 5-star rating on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen. You can follow me on Blue Sky at gtavernetti, on Twitter, X, at gtavernetti, and you can learn more about me and the work I do at my website, tesscg.com. That's TESSCG.com, where you will also find information about ordering my books, Teach Fast, Focused, Adaptable, Structured Teaching, and maximizing the impact of coaching cycles.